I've been asked quite a bit recently to draw clouds or do a video on drawing clouds, and I have to admit, I don't usually pay much attention to the sky. My focus has usually or initially been on the architecture, and when I wasn't drawing architecture, I was making sure there were enough trees and whatnot to capture attention without needing to think about the skies too much. And maybe it's because in Australia, so often we just have a completely clear blue sky. However, clouds are around an awful lot, and even in Australia, we get them. We get the most amazing summer clouds. I haven't found many good references, and we just simply haven't had cloudy days where it wasn't just complete grey cloud cover or hot blue sky, even in winter. So I haven't had much choice. I did have all these photos of clouds when I was painting that I was going to paint, but a good photo to paint is not necessarily a good photo to draw, particularly in ink. So I was rummaging through and found this cloud boiling up behind a headland. In Australia, we talk of our summer clouds as boiling, these massive cumulus clouds that really bubble and balloon up and out and before our eyes often, and become enormous, and then they release the most torrential and often furiously fast thunderstorms, and then they're gone. So that's a pretty typical Australian summer afternoon. But I start with drawing the headland, and I know that the challenge is going to be to try and have the cloud feel light and airy and ethereal. And so the contrast between the lines for the cloud and the lines for the headland and the beach and the waves in front is going to be really important. So I'm sort of deliberately drawing the headland with heavy lines that I actually go over a little bit more later on. So now I start to think about the cloud. And I experimented a few times. This wasn't my first drawing for this. I have 3 or 4 experiments that I did over the last couple of weeks as I thought about clouds. And I can't say I really found any pen drawings of clouds that I found were particularly ones I would want to try and copy the style of. The biggest problem I had was the direction of the lines, particularly in a cloud such as this, which actually goes down below ground level. The base of the cloud is apparently, but not in reality, below the horizon line. Because it was very difficult to position the lines so that it didn't look like the cloud was some sort of mushroom growing up out of the ground. And so in the end, I settled for these long sweeping lines that verged on the horizontal at the very base, which is often how I think it could be appropriate to draw a cumulus cloud if it was up in the middle of the sky, with basically horizontal lines at the base, because we're seeing the base of the cloud when we see completely under it. We're seeing the base of it at some measure of foreshortening, which I thought would create more of a horizontal line effect. But here, of course, the lines aren't horizontal. The cloud is actually dipping below the horizon, in appearance at least. But then higher up, I was wanting to get some lines that had a sense of the vertical, because these clouds literally boil upwards in the summer afternoon heat as the day and the humidity wear on and as the temperature rises. And so trying to sort of create a sense of shadow, of bulkiness, but not of weight, to get some of the difference of definition of the edges of the cloud, where the cloud looks as if it touches the sky. These were all challenges, and trying to get some of the tonal values that are represented in the cloud as well, but still keep it feeling light. And this is where I was glad I went quite heavily with my lines for the headland and for the ocean. And I'm just trying to look at the values of the bluey grey tones on the cloud and work out which ones I need to darken. Now, I've not tried to draw this exactly. I felt that was unnecessary, and in a sense I'd go with what I felt was going to look best for the line work I was doing. And now I decide, yes, to work the headland over a little bit darker, just to create more visual separation between the darkness of the cloud lower down and the clearly, if we look at our reference photo, darker values of the headland. And as we've talked, values are always read in relation to other values. So in this case, the values are provided, the darkness is provided by the hatching lines that I'm doing. And in places, cross-hatching as well. But I'm wanting to get a sense of movement with my lines, that this cloud is a living, breathing, growing organism almost, and that it has movement to it, a great sense of movement. And I decided to be a little bit sort of theatrical or illustrative and to do some horizontal lines to represent the blue of the sky, that particularly where the blue touches the whitest parts of the cloud, which are often the more distinct parts to actually look at, that it gave a sense of there was colour coming up against them. And it's not an overly literal interpretation of the sky. It's a little more symbolic, I think, of what's happening. But I thought it worked nicely, because I think in the end, the cloud and the sky is really the focus of this drawing. And so to accentuate the cloud, I thought by putting in some sky marks was a useful thing to do. So I put it in. What do you think? Tell me in the comments whether you would have put the sky lines in, or whether in fact you'd have put more in and covered the whole sky with horizontal lines to suggest the blue tonings of the sky. And of course, once you start, it is a challenge to know where to stop. I wanted them to look a bit random, but I didn't want any gaps that were too big, so anyway. And I just changed some little directional lines down here in the corner just to set up a bit of visual tension with the lines that I'd already drawn. To put some in a different direction can I think be a nice balancing move in our composition. And then I really just have these waves to represent down here in the foreground, the very foreground. It's really important, I think, with this sort of subject to forget that they're waves and to really look at them as bands of value, some lighter bands, some darker bands, and to simply try and represent those values in horizontal bands with whatever slight variation in the banding is caused by the waves that are breaking and what's white and what not. And in the very front, I do broken lines to represent the fact that we can see a bit more of the wave action here, of the choppiness of the water reflecting the light. Whereas further back, we're really looking at what appears to be a fairly flat surface of value. So again, I don't have overly a huge amount of experience of beach scenes in drawing, but we're looking at value and we're representing it with our line work, and that's the principle of so much of the drawing that we do, certainly that I've done. And so I basically just keep looking at that and looking up at my clouds every now and then to see, are they looking like clouds? Are they feeling like clouds? What do you think? Do they have a sense of cloudiness to you, or do they look a bit heavy? How would you have done it? Do you think you've got a better cloud style that you could describe to us? Pencil obviously gives us a few more options, because with graphite we can lay value by laying the pencil end on its side and actually laying value of various intensity down on the paper. So in some ways, pencil is a more natural medium to use for drawing clouds than ink is, particularly if we're trying to get some sort of a realistic sense of the cloud in our scene. Ink isn't a natural friend of that process. But here's one technique you can use. So what do you think? The principle is to try and get some sense of direction in our lines. Try not to let the cloud lines overweigh too much what's beneath it, because we don't usually want clouds to be the heaviest thing in our drawing. G'day, I'm Stephen Travis. Look, what do you think? Why don't you have a go at drawing this cloud yourself? I will post the photo on my channel community page, of course, so you can have a go at drawing this cloud and see how light and airy an effect you're able to get using pen and ink. But look, whatever you draw, clouds or something else, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.